Purnamida Purnamidam Purna Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, that Brahman is infinite. This phenomenal world is also infinite. But this is only a projection of that. Nevertheless, if this is taken away, that remains infinite as before. Om, peace to the individuals, peace to the planets, peace to the animals. So there's only 2 verses left. We've been studying Isha Upanishad, and there's only 2 verses left, so we'll probably finish it tonight. And so let me first, I'll read the verses we covered before. It says, in this changing world, everything is subject to change, yet everything is covered by the Lord. Practice renunciation and be strong in the consciousness of the self. Do not run after anyone's wealth. A man may wish to live for 100 years, performing his duties as prescribed by the Scriptures. O man, if you do your duties in this way, then the results of whatever you do will not cling to you. There is no other way. There are worlds known to be sunless and fit for demons. They are enveloped in darkness, such as what the blind, in other words, those devoid of self-knowledge, experience. Those people who have neglected the attainment of self-knowledge and have thus committed suicide, as it were, are doomed to enter those worlds after death. Brahman is one without a second. It never moves, yet it goes faster than the mind. It is always ahead. The sense organs can never catch up with it. It is still, yet it defeats all in the race. By its power, the Lord who dwells in space upholds water and everything else in the phenomenal world. That Brahman moves, and it does not move. It is far off, and it is also nearby. That Brahman is inside of this, and is also its outside. He who sees everything in himself, and himself in everything, never hates anything. When a person knows that he himself has become everything, and he knows the oneness of things, how can he hate or love anything? He, the Self, is all-pervasive, radiant, without a form, without any defect, immaculate, untainted, all-knowing, the master of his own mind, the best of all, of independent origin and eternal. He dispenses to each his due. Those who mechanically perform sacrifices, avidya, go into a darkness that is like being blind. But those who merely worship gods and goddesses, vidya, go into a deeper darkness. Scholars say that the path of avidya, performing agnihotra and other sacrifices, and the path of vidya, worshiping gods and goddesses, produce different results. Wise men confirm this. Those who worship the unmanifested, the causal state of the world, go into a darkness that is like being blind. But those who worship the manifested, the world we see around us, go into a deeper darkness. Scholars say that the worship of Sambhuti, or Hiranyagarbha, and Asambhuti, Prakriti, produce different results. Wise men confirm this. He who worships the unmanifested, Asambhuti, and also the manifested, Sambhuti, attains immortality by the unmanifested, Asambhuti, and conquers death by the manifested, Sambhuti. The face of truth is hidden by a shining disk. O Son, the sustainer of life and everything in this world, please remove the disk, so that I, a seeker of truth, may see. O Nourisher, solitary traveler and guide, O Son, son of Prajapati, please gather your rays, withdraw your light. I want to see your most beautiful form. There is that Purusha within you. I am that Purusha, that person. So this is the first 16 verses which we've come to, and now, as I said, there's just 2 verses to go, 17th and 18th. And usually, in most of the scriptures, when you get to the end of the scripture, the final verses tend to be a kind of a description of, okay, if you do this, if you read this 3 times, then you'll attain heaven, or you'll get this benefit or that benefit. You'll mention some kind of benefit of why you should be reading the scripture. Now in this, these last 2 verses are talking about the soul that's on its way, ready to depart the earth, ready, facing death. And so now it's addressing itself. This is Vayuradila Mam Tamatedam Basmatam Sharira. Om Kratal Smara Kritam Smara. Kratal Smara Kritam Smara. So now that death is coming, I pray that my life force may merge with the cosmic life force. Let this body be consigned to fire and reduced to ashes. Mind, think of all I have done throughout my life. Think of my deeds again and again. So it says, many thoughts crowd into our minds as we die, and these thoughts reflect the kind of life we have lived. But at that time, a special effort should be made to think only of good things. What we think we become. We are the byproduct of our thoughts. This is why we tell our minds again and again to think good thoughts. And this is why relatives also hold special prayers at the time of our death. So the idea is that when the soul leaves the body, it takes with it what they call the subtle body, or sukshma shariram, but it contains all the samskaras, all the impressions that we have created during our life. And so this final thought that a soul has is not just a superficial thought, but it's a kind of uprising of all the impressions and things, and that gives direction of where the soul goes next on its journey, and eventually what type of birth it takes next time, and so on. And so it's kind of very important what we think. There's a well-known saying, that as you think, so you become. Most people, we don't tend to think or pay much attention to what we're thinking, but actually what we're thinking is shaping the whole direction of our consciousness, and it is basically making us the person we are. And in most cases, for most people, the whole process is pretty much unconscious. Just whatever thoughts come into the mind, that just happens, it's just there, and there's little kind of sense of taking control over it. But in Raja Yoga, when a person starts to lead a spiritual life, then one of the main practices is focusing on putting in, consciously, putting in particular thoughts. See, whatever we put in consciously, it goes into the subconscious. And eventually, it comes out, back out of the subconscious, back to the surface again, and so on. Now, if we put in all the time thoughts and feelings of anger, of hatred, of fear, anxiety, all these, then all of that goes into the subconscious, and it eventually comes back, so that this state of fear, of anxiety, of anger, of hatred, this becomes a kind of a chronic state. And many people, they just say, well, this is the way I am. This is just the way, natural thing I am. Not realizing that if they begin to actually put in good thoughts, slowly the subconscious begins to fill up with the good thoughts, and in time, those good thoughts, that becomes your nature. And so at any point, we can literally create ourselves to be whatever we want to be by beginning to put in the right kinds of thoughts. Now, this is especially true when the soul leaves the body. Because when we're in a body, we're in a certain life condition, we have certain physical kind of elements there and things which sort of limit our ability to express ourselves. We have a certain job, certain family, all certain life situations, and we're kind of confined within that. But then when the soul leaves the body, it's now free. It's not kind of confined within a rigid kind of physical life. It's now free, and whatever its subtle body, its mind wants to create, it gives shape to that. And important part is where the soul is wanting to go towards the light or towards the darkness. Towards God or away from God. We mentioned before in some of the other verses how what we call hells or lower realms or something. These are really just different states of kind of darkness, and then there's higher realms which are greater and greater manifestations of the light. Now, depending on a person's nature, he may be attracted towards the light if he's been spiritual, or he may resist the light and want to escape from the light and goes into darkness. And basically, is if we want to let God, Spirit, into our consciousness, then we'll be drawn towards the light. But if we want to keep God out, if we want to hold on to our selfishness and that ego and all of our kind of negative tendencies, then we shut that light out. We mentioned before, we used the example how God's grace, God's light is always shining. Like the sun, it's always shining. He's always there for everybody. But in each one of us, we have the capacity to pull down our shades and sit in darkness. And this is what most people tend to do. Is like, God is there, yes, and many people, religious people, say, yes, God is there, yes, I love God, no, but I don't want Him to mess with my life. I don't want Him to disturb things. And so we tend to shut the presence of God out, and then we live our own personal life with our own personal desires and ambitions and so forth, and it can be a good life, or it can be a bad life. So, but in any case, most of us, to some extent or other, we tend to block God out because that presence of God actually eventually will dissolve the ego and will dissolve this separation. This is the fundamental cause of all our problems, the fundamental cause of all of our kind of failures is we develop a sense of separation from God. It's not that God ever leaves us. Always, every moment we're in the presence of God. There's nowhere we can go. We create a barrier that says, that God isn't here, that I'm here. Now, in Shankara's philosophy, they speak of two aspects of Maya, what they call the illusion. First is the veiling aspect. In order to have this creation, in order to have this kind of Maya going on, the first thing you have to do is kind of block out the presence of God. Then, it's like the movie screen. First of all, you put up a movie screen. And then once the movie screen is there, you can project any film you want. It can be a good, happy film, or it can be a very negative film with a lot of violence and things in it. But it can be any film that you want to create. So each one of us, we have kind of blocked God out, blocked the presence of God out. We're saying, okay, this is my world, and then we create according to our thoughts, according to our actions, according to our feelings, our desires, all these things. We create the life we experience. And for the most part, it's kind of a mixed bag. It's because it's this very realm that we're in, this very life that we're in is made up of the pairs of opposites. So if you want good, you also get bad. If you want happiness, you also get unhappiness. But underlying it is that which is eternally, infinitely good, infinitely loving. And as soon as a person becomes aware of that, then he finds everything fulfilled. But until he's aware of it, we go up and down with our experiences. So this is the journey of the individual soul, is going through experience after experience, always thinking, okay, last life I was poor. Now this life I can be rich. And then, things will be much better. And according to his karma and so forth, he can get that life. And then he experiences that. And says, okay, I was rich, now let me be something else. And like that, the soul is always searching, going through all kinds of different experiences, always thinking, if I can get this thing, then this is what's going to fulfill me. This is what's going to make me happy. And once you're in a body, once you're in a particular life, then in many ways you're kind of confined within that experience. But when the soul is free from the body, then it's free to go and reach after whatever it wants to do. So if we have unfulfilled desires, we can maybe express them now, but the next life, then we can get that desire. Just like I use the example, suppose somebody his main desire is he wants to play in the Chicago Bulls. And he practices, but he's only 5 feet tall. So no matter what he does, he's never going to be able to play on the Chicago Bulls. But then, because of that desire and the practice and everything he's done, the next life, he'll get a body that's 7 feet tall. And then he'll be able to play all the basketball he wants. I just read there's a guy from India, he's 7 feet 5 inches tall, that he's just been hired by a basketball team. Anyway, so like that, what we can't express now, but the desires are there, but what we can't express now, when we're free of this particular life experience, then the soul can go and do it. And the soul keeps doing this over and over again until eventually it realizes that I'm going through all these different experiences, I'm always seeking something, I'm always finding a little bit of satisfaction, but also a lot of dissatisfaction and frustration. Until it begins to turn its attention in the other direction and begin to ask, wait a minute, who am I? What's actually going on there? Where did this universe come from? Where is God? How can I experience God? When these questions come, then the person, instead of focusing always on something out there, something, I'm going to grab this over here, or grab that over there, now he begins to search within, and this is where, gradually, he begins to discover the tremendous kind of treasure of the spiritual reality that's there, and that's his by divine right, his by his very nature, because we're all, as the scriptures say, we're all children of the world of bliss. We're all children of God, and God said, okay, go out and play. And so we run and play and go through all kinds of things, and then eventually the urge comes to go home. I remember when we were kids, we would go on a vacation. We lived in Virginia, we'd drive up, we had relatives in Vandalia, Illinois. And so we would drive up there and have a nice vacation. But by the end of vacation, then everybody wanted to get back home. At first you're all excited, oh yeah, I want to go have a vacation. But then after a while you say, oh, I want to get back home. So like that, the soul, it keeps going around and doing all kinds of things, and then the urge comes that, no, now I want to go back home. And this then leads it to the fulfillment of things. Because up till then, it was a small individual experiencing different kind of individual things. Even if it was the king of a country, or even if it was God, it was still kind of having a limited existence. But when it begins to go back to the source, to the real self, the self with a capital S, then it discovers that, I'm everything that exists, everything. I'm everything that's there, that's me. And so then it realizes, well, why do I have to become a small person anymore? What is there that I need, that I lack? Everything is here. And this is the problem, is that in order to attain that state, in order to become united with God, in order to know our kind of true divine self, we have to give up the little separate self that we've been holding on to, and which has all kinds of desires and things it wants to do. And so gradually this is a process that you see in all religions, that as a person starts to become spiritual, there begins a process of self-abnegation. At one point, we're all selfish, we're all trying to grab as much as we can to satisfy our desires as much as we can. But then, anybody in any religion who's on the kind of spiritual path is beginning to reverse that process. Instead of saying me, you begin to say thou, thou, thou. Not I, but thou. Not my will, but thy will. And this actually is beginning to make the transition in consciousness from that small self, which has separated itself from the divine, and beginning to shift back into its awareness of its true divine nature, its true divine heritage. And as it does that, all the glories of God begin to flood into that soul. And then gradually goes higher and higher and higher, more and more towards God, and drawn more and more. But there has to be that kind of that willingness to kind of allow God to come into your life. And then when you do that, it's like Sri Krishna's example. He said that all the children are playing a game, all the children are all happy, so the mother looks on. And she sees all the children are happy with the game, and she just does her housework and lets them play. But as soon as one of the children gets tired of the game, begins to cry and wants his mother, then right away the mother comes and she picks up the child and takes care of him. It's like that. God looks at us, oh, you're happy making money, you're happy doing this, you're happy running for president, and like that. All these things, okay. And God pretty much leaves us alone and we go about our own business. But then, when the soul at some point gets tired of things, gets tired of just having a job or making money, and begins to really yearn for something more than just the human experience, then the divine begins to come in. And then you begin to gradually become aware of the grace of God that's there. The grace of God is always there. As Sri Krishna said, the breeze of God's grace is always blowing, but we have to unfurl our sails. In all your spiritual practices and effort, it really has nothing to do with attracting God's grace, because it's always there. It's all to do with removing the barriers that keep the grace from coming in. I've used the example of how in India, particularly Bengal, around Sharavati and all, they have rice fields. And in each rice field, at least in Bengal, it's like each one's like about an acre square, and there's like a ridge around it. And the rice field requires a lot of irrigation, a lot of water. And so what they do is they dig a tunnel, a trough, from a stream, local river, into the field, and then they put like a wooden gate in front of it. And so when they don't need water, the gate is there and keeps the water out. As soon as when they need the water, then they just lift the gate, and automatically the water begins to flow in. So like that, God's grace is always there, standing at the door. As Christ said, stand at the door and knock. But we have to say, come in. But as soon as you say, come in, then the grace can begin to flow and begin to transform you. So we have the capacity to develop our consciousness. We can go from the smallest, darkest state of consciousness all the way up to the infinite divine state of consciousness. It all depends on what we want, where we focus our attention. And so when we leave the body, at the very last one, then the impressions give the direction to the soul. As you say, karma, the actions person, but also particularly the samskaras, the impressions that are there in the mind, the desires that are there, and attitudes and so forth. These things draw the soul kind of into its next experience. And so it's that final thought is not something that you can just necessarily control. Say, okay, I'll lead a real bad life, but then at the last moment I'll think some good thoughts and go to heaven. When I went to Catholic school, and you remember one of the stories the nuns told us was that in the Catholic Church they had the idea of confession. That the person goes to the priest, he tells the priest his sins, and then the sins are forgiven. They're absolved. And so this one fresh nobleman said, okay, I will lead a very sinful life. I'll just do all kinds of bad things, but I always keep a priest nearby. So the last moment, then I'll make confession, and then everything will be good. But then one day he was out riding, and a tree fell on him, and there's no priest around, so he missed out on it. So like that, we may think, oh, yeah, last man will think some good thoughts, but actually at those last moments, we may not be in control over your thoughts, because they all tend to just kind of rush up. However, at the same time, it is important, though, to try to give the mind a good direction during the last moments. And this is why, traditionally, that if a person's on their deathbed or some folks, they'll read scriptures to them, read the Gita, some other scriptures, or say prayers for the person. These things help. These things help kind of prepare the soul so that it's ready to move on in a good direction. And this is also part in the Hindu tradition. After 13 days, they're supposed to have the Shraddha ceremony. The idea behind that is basically telling the soul that, okay, all your duties are fulfilled, your ancestors are appeased, everything is done now, this life is over, now move on. Because sometimes if the soul is very attached to this world, to people in this world, it doesn't want to move on. It wants to hold on. And so it can get kind of stuck there. And so that is, you want to remind the soul that you're ready now to move on with your spiritual journey. And we think of death, we tend to think of death as something fearful, something frightening, but yeah, there's been a lot of research lately, in the last few years, about people who have what they call near-death experiences. They get right to the threshold of death, but then rather than leaving the body completely, they come back. But they have some memory, some experience of that. And it's interesting, all of the people who've had this kind of near-death experience, who've actually experienced a little bit of death, they lose all their fear of death. They realize that this particular life that we're in is just a little small part of things, that there's a whole vast reality there, a very wonderful reality there. And that as we leave this physical body, and it's like we're in this particular room now. This is what Sri Ramakrishna said. When Holy Mother, after Sri Ramakrishna left the body, Holy Mother started taking off her jewelry and things like a Hindu widow does. And Sri Ramakrishna appeared to her, and he said, why are you taking off your jewelry? Don't you know I've just gone from one room into another? And this is the way it is. In this particular room right now, we're experiencing this particular life, this particular physical existence right now. When we leave the body, it's just like, well, now we step into another room. Okay? It's actually generally so much kind of happier, less stressful room than where we are now. We think, we tend to hold on by any means possible. People tend to hold on to life, but actually, life is kind of a pain in the neck for most of us. Compared to what's there. We just don't realize what else is there, and so we think, I've got to desperately hold on to this. But actually, those who have experienced, had these near-death experiences, who've gotten a glimpse of what it's like, have lost all fear of death. They realize that it's just a transition, just a movement from one experience to another. And it actually removes the fear rather than creates the fear. So we tend to think, and death is a very negative thing because our awareness right now tends to be limited to, I'm this body, I'm this person, I'm in this life right now, and that's all I know. But beyond that is kind of the infinite glory of God. Is a whole infinite reality is there for the soul to explore. And the more it's attracted to the light, the more it's attracted to the divine, the higher it tends to go. Until eventually, finally, it reaches the point of complete union with God, where the barriers that kept it separate and isolated from the divine. Those barriers are gone completely, and now that soul is liberated, attained moksha. And now he realizes that there's no need for me to take on birth anymore, because there's nothing I'm lacking, nothing that's missing. This is perfect where I am. Why should I go and come back and kind of what, from the spiritual standpoint, it is like a dungeon to the person. You know, this world is actually, it's like a prison cell. Within a prison cell, you're in a room like 8 by 10 feet. Within that 8 by 10 feet, you can do anything you want. You can walk up and down, you can play the tuba, you can do anything. But after 10 feet, you hit a wall. And always we find we're hitting walls after a certain point. But now, when the soul is released from the body, it's like now you're out of prison. Now the whole world, the whole vast universe begins to open up to you. And so this is what is praying. He said, let me kind of move in the right direction. He said, when the soul leaves the body, if it has a lot of negative things, it may go down into deeper darkness. But if it has good impressions, good intentions, then they'll be drawn to more and more of the kind of divine glory of God. So when the soul is ready to leave the body, the person is ready to leave the body, it's good to put in prayers, good thoughts, or like reading scripture, things like this. This is very valuable because it tends to orient kind of the soul. But also, it's what you've done your whole life. This is what's ultimately going to determine what your destiny is. So this was verse 17, next to last verse. It says, now that death is coming, I pray that my life force may merge with the cosmic life force. Let this body be consigned to fire and reduced to ashes. Mind, think of all I have done throughout my life. Think of my deeds again and again. And now we come to the final verse. Agne naya supataraye asma vishvani deva vayumani vidva yuyodyas marjo huramameno bhuyishtam te nama uttim videva. This is, O fire, in order that good things may come to us, please lead us along the right path. O God, you know everything we do and think. Please remove all evil from within us. We salute you again and again. So this is a prayer to fire to lead us to Brahma. At the time of death, the gross body is consumed by fire, but the subtle body remains. The subtle body consists of 17 parts. The 5 branches of the life force, prana, the 5 organs of perception, jnanendriya, the 5 organs of action, karmendriya, the mind, manas, and the intellect, buddhi. All of these are material, but in a very fine form. So the mind retains all the impressions of what we have done and thought. When we die, our individual self leaves the gross body, but it remains in its subtle body. Depending upon its karma, the fruits of action, the soul will then go to either of 2 lokas, the worlds. The Pitru Loka, the world of the ancestors, or Deva Loka, the world of the gods and goddesses. Our karma also determines how long our stay in one of these worlds will last. Then the soul is reborn in this world, for its desires are still unfulfilled. So thus the soul keeps moving back and forth between death and life until it realizes the futility of this exercise and turns to the path of renunciation. It is only renunciation that can pave the way to liberation. And this process culminates when the individual self merges with the cosmic self. So this is, that was the final verse of the Isha Upanishad. And it's, he mentions that as long as we have desires, then we're going to be kind of incarnating as individual self, as a small self, in order to enjoy those desires, to experience them. And those desires last as long as we have a sense of individuality. That I am this person, I am this individual, and I want for me, I want this, and I want that, and I want that. Now, the ultimate goal is to kind of, what is it, merge with the cosmic self, become united with the cosmic self. Then you don't have this small individual saying, yes, I want this for me, I want this for me, and I want this for me. Now you're just the one consciousness that is equally within all beings. Instead of looking at this one body and saying, that's me, and I'm going to give everything I can for that body, you're now in the one universal consciousness, where yourself is the self of all. And then there's no longer a distinction, and there's no longer the desire is to kind of manifest as an individual, because you're one with everything. You've attained everything. And so this is why in Hinduism and Vedanta the goal isn't to get to heaven. In Hinduism they believe in heaven, they believe in hells too. But these are all temporary things. A person after this life, he goes to some heaven, he stays there for a while, and then again he'll try to come back to earth and try to express something. And this goes on. Kind of, you have physical existence. You go to heaven for a while, some celestial realm, and then you're born again. You come back to earth, and this kind of goes on until you attain moksha, liberation. Until you discover that I am the consciousness here, the consciousness which has been saying, I, this is me. That consciousness is actually the consciousness, the universal consciousness that's throughout is Brahman. Brahman, the consciousness of Brahman, which is manifested in everything. When a person realizes that, then the idea of having that small self and of attaining some riches or something in the world, it's no longer there. It's like, and this whole process they call samsara. Coming and going and coming and going, the wheel of samsara. But it's like going to school. You have to keep going to school until you graduate. And moksha is like graduation. Yeah. You go to school, and then you have summer vacation. So you go to heaven for a while, you play and all. And then again you have to come back and take another course and like that, go on. But eventually then you graduate. And now you don't have to come back to school anymore. Now you stay with God if you want. Now, at this point, there are two different types of souls that Sri Krishna will talk about. One is the Jiva Koti and the Ishvara Koti. The Jiva Koti, when he attains his moksha, when he attains his liberation, when he attains that perfect union with God, where everything's perfect, then he never thinks about the world again. He never goes back here and there. He's just totally gone into the perfection of the divine. Now, there's another type of soul called the Ishvara Koti. That these, even though they've attained their graduation, even though they've attained their moksha, they've graduated, they may still come back voluntarily now. When the souls are in samsara, they're caught up in there and they're just kind of helplessly sort of drug along. It's like a person, we find ourselves helplessly dragged along by our emotions or by certain desires or something, like the drug addict or something. He knows it's wrong, he knows it's making him unhappy, but he can't help it. It's just force. So like that, when we're in samsara, we tend to be just dragged along by things. But when a soul attains moksha, a liberation, he can still embody as an individual, but it's under his control now. It's voluntary. It's just like some people, when they graduate, they go into graduate school. They say, let me learn higher lessons, or they become teachers. And this is where the great spiritual teachers come from, is kind of great souls, that they've attained their salvation, but now they help others to attain their salvation. It's like Swami Krishna. gave the parable of how three men were walking along and they saw the big high wall there. And they could hear some kind of celebration or something was going on the inside. So they found a ladder, and the first person, he climbed up the ladder. He got to the top, he looked over, and then he gave a great shout of joy and he jumped inside. But his two friends, what was that? What was going on? They still didn't know what was going on inside. So then the second one, he did the same thing. He climbed the ladder, looked inside, he gave a great shout of joy and he jumped inside. Now the third one, he went up, and he saw, when he looked over, he saw the most wonderful things going on. And he was all set to jump in and join his friends, but then he thought, if I go in there, nobody else will know about this kind of wonderful thing. And so he climbed back down the ladder, and he went and told other people to come see this wonderful thing that's there. But this is the Isha Upanishad. He could stay immersed in the bliss of God, totally satisfied, totally perfect, or he make them now so that other people can help other people to experience what's there. And so, and see, the thing is, the higher a person goes into spiritual knowledge, the less distinction there is between me and you, between this person and that person. And that's why as long as selfishness is there, then it means we're small, we're separate, isolated individual. As selfishness begins to develop, this idea of thinking of me first begins to dissipate, and instead it's just whatever's good for the consciousness as a whole, for the universe as a whole. And so this is kind of brings us to the end of the Isha Upanishad. First we did the Katha Upanishad. Now we finished Isha Upanishad. We'll have one more session on the Isha Upanishad, kind of a summary session, and there's some other kind of appendixes and things we can read from the book. We've kind of explained it a little bit more. And then after, so figure one more week on this, and then after that, then we'll start on the Kena Upanishad. Now, coming up then, any questions? Then coming up, tomorrow night there's going to be a roundup. This weekend, we're having our Sanskrit camp, not ours, but Sanskrit Bharati's having their Sanskrit camp at Ganges, and that's where a lot of our regular people have gone. And so that's going on. On tomorrow, we're having Ramnam here after the Arti. Arti is at 7, and Ramnam will be at 7:30. Then on Sunday, there is Rakshabandhan, and we're going to have a special guest from Brahmachari Kriyananda from the Kriyananda Yoga Center over in Joliet. He's going to come and he'll speak on Rakshabandhan. And that's on this Sunday. Swami Isha Upanishad is in Texas now. He's went to Dallas today, and then he'll go to Austin, and he'll be back on Monday evening. But so we'll have this Brahmachari Kriyananda. We'll give a talk on Rakshabandhan on Sunday. And then coming up the following weekend, we'll be celebrating Krishna Janmashtami on Sunday. And then we have our yoga classes going on Sunday now, only on Sunday from 9:30 to 10:30. One class is on the foundation of yoga, which is like the basic asanas, and one class is on meditation and yoga. And so those are there. And we also have our Sanskrit class. I don't think there'll be any Sanskrit class this weekend because of the camp, but we also have Sanskrit class go on every Sunday. Om Asato Ma Sagyaya Tamso Ma Jyotirgaya Mrityurma Amritam Gaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O Lord, lead us from the unreal to the real, lead us from darkness to light, and lead us from death to immortality. Oh, peace, peace, peace.